The Leave Your Legacy podcast is brought to you by Covenant Workplace Solutions. Covenant is a full-service workplace mental health and wellness partner, helping organizations across the country strengthen the lives of their employees and the families they go home to every day. Your employee assistance program should raise the bar, not simply check the box. And Storyline Multimedia. Storyline is an Iowa City-based media company that creates high-quality video, photo, and audio for local businesses. They produce a number of great podcasts, including this one. If you're interested in sharing your story, please contact them at storylinemultimedia.com. And remember, your story matters. I'm back in the studio, but I'm coming back with just this new energy on some things that have really been very, very positive in my life, but it's also something that's been very, very reflective. And one of the things that I've really had the opportunity to talk about and really think about is how failure has actually led through breakthrough. And for me, it's helped me align myself really with my purpose. And so on this solo podcast, we're going to talk about how failure can lead to breakthrough and purpose. Now, when you think about failure, most people think of that as a negative thing because nobody wants to fail. But the reality is failure is feedback and it's not final. And so you have to believe that failure isn't the end, it's information. Failure is one of those things where you have to look at what led to the failure, what can you learn from it, and then how can you take that and put it into a positive spin when it comes to your life, your direction, and maybe some things that you've really been trying to figure out when it comes to your actual purpose. I think one of the things that we struggle with every day is, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What direction am I supposed to go? And sometimes you have to fail in order to find that. Failure has been one of the biggest things that's helped transform me. My biggest failure was almost losing my marriage. And you talk about a gut punch. That was one of those things that I never knew I would come back from, but I did. So you think about that, it's a setback. Setbacks expose what needs to be refined. Whether it's your mindset, your habits, your system, or in my case, my relationship, I had to look at how this failure in my life, how was that going to push me forward to being the person that my wife says would become the best version of me. See, my wife didn't want me to fail. And the one thing that she always did is she always saw the greatness in me that I didn't see in myself. So in this moment, I was like, how am I going to take probably one of the most painful things, turn that into something that was going to benefit me and my family moving forward? Now, you have to reframe things. Reframing failure as feedback removes the shame and opens the door to growth. And that's really what I had to do. Now, a great quote is this: you either win or you learn, but you never lose if you keep learning. One of the things about life is there's a cyclical reaction to everything that we do. And learning is something that can never stop. So if you're always learning, you're never failing. And so that's why it's so important to be able to look at your failure, learn from it, and then put things in place so that it never happens again. Now, when you talk about failure, I think the one thing that comes to mind is you feel broken, so to speak. But let's remember this: brokenness can build strength. True growth rarely comes from comfort. It's forged through adversity. God often uses broken moments to rebuild us stronger, more focused, and more compassionate. Our struggles shape our character, not just our success stories. In Romans 8:28, it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." So for me, as a human, it's always hard to find good in things that we perceive as bad. And I think all of us, in some way, shape, or form, are broken. And that's not a bad thing, because no one is perfect. There's no person on this earth that's perfect. There's always progress. And so I think that's what we have to look at. In those moments where we feel that we're broken, we have to be able to turn to, what's the positive in this? How can I take this moment and turn it into something good for me, my family, my friends, my coworkers? That's where I think we as humans fail. It's when we're in those valleys, we feel sorry for ourselves. But it's in those valleys where we can actually grow to become the version of ourselves that not only will benefit the people around you, but it'll benefit this world. And I think it's in those broken moments where we can find true strength and move forward in a way that's going to benefit us and help us move into what our purpose is here on earth. Now, you've heard me say failure. You've heard me say purpose. Failure clarifies your purpose. And this is how. Failure strips away distractions and false pursuits. It forces you to ask, what truly matters? What am I called to do? Many of life's breakthroughs happen right after moments of deep disappointment or loss. When doors close, it often means your purpose is being redirected, not denied. Now, that's really, really hard for a lot of us to understand that, right? Because we talk about, I had this opportunity, but the door closed. I had this opportunity, but the door closed. I was that person. I was chasing something that I believe was my purpose, but obviously it wasn't meant to be. What was it? So I always thought I was going to be this big time Division I college coach. And so I was always chasing it. Everything I did, whether it was coaching AAU or I applied for every job in the world when it came open. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I know the game of basketball. I played it at a high level. That's what I thought my purpose was. But as I look back on it, there were so many doors that closed and there were so many signs that I wasn't supposed to be doing that. But here's what happened. I got kicked in the stomach. Literally, my life changed when my wife sent me a text message and said, our marriage is over. I really had to figure out what I was going to do. I really had to figure out what was I here to do. And I was actually challenged with that question through counseling. He asked me, you've had all the success, whatever, we're talking high school, McDonald's All-American, you're a starter at Iowa, all this kind of stuff. You played a little bit of professional basketball, but what is it all for? Is that what you want to define you? And really, it took a long time for me to really figure that out. And it took a session where I literally closed my eyes. I didn't see anything. It was black. And I'm like, this is not a good feeling. And so it was in that I started to really think about what I was doing. And when I surrendered that idea, when I focused on other things, when I focused on the things that was going to make me a better father, husband, son, friend, when I focused on those things, it was like this path just opened up for me. And where I thought I was supposed to be a college basketball coach, I became a leader, a mentor, and a coach in a different way. It opened up so many opportunities for me professionally when I stopped trying to force my way in one direction and I just let my strengths and the changes I was making in myself, when I let those things to happen organically, it was like the world opened up for me. And so a lot of times we have to look at failure as really redirecting us to where we should be. Looking introspectively, really seeing what our strengths are and really leaning into those things. And I'm telling you this, I'm a believer. If you allow your purpose to lead you, there's nothing you can't do. Now, as we look at how can we take all these things and put it together to help you move into a place of your purpose. The process prepares the platform. What I mean by that, before you can stand in your purpose, you must be prepared for it. Somebody asked me the question when I was at a men's retreat, and they were asking me about like, how are you so confident in the things that you're doing? Like, you got this facility project, you're doing this, you're doing that. How are you so confident in the things you do? And one of the things I told him was, I've always been prepared. That's the one thing I learned, because a lot of times if you have one idea or you have one plan, there's probably going to be something that helps derail that plan. So I always say you have to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. And honestly, if you think out, you might have to have a plan D. So you always have to have some sort of development plan for everything that you're doing. And one of the things I talk about is how this plan is all built on habits. Failure is the training ground where humility, patience, and perseverance are developed. Now, we talked about that valley before. We talked about being in the dark place. We talked about being broken. But it's if you can find yourself in those moments that you can build on, like that's where you see yourself just grow into a human that you probably didn't know you had inside of you. So what you can learn from the valley equips you to handle success with wisdom at the peak. Now, for me, and I've talked about it, almost losing my marriage and my family, that actually became a catalyst for a lot of things that I speak on. So when I was going through my own transformation, and I'm not saying it stopped because I think this is cyclical as well, those moments became the foundation for what I call E to the fourth power, or the 4 E's of personal growth. I had to create a framework of things that I felt were going to help me, things that I know I could do on a daily that would allow me to become the person that, being quite honestly, the person that my wife saw that I could become. I give her a lot of credit. I think we all should. But it was that. It was one of those things, like she would always tell me these little things and she's like, I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it. I just didn't see it in myself. But I had to create some kind of framework. I had to create some kind of habits that was going to allow me to be a better husband, father, and leader. And so those 4 things: establish habits, execute those habits, evaluate those habits, and then evolve if I had to. And it's through that cycle of the 4 E's that I've been able to not only grow deeper in, I would say on the spiritual side, grow deeper in my faith. It's allowed me to grow deeper in my relationships. It's also allowed me to really give some life lessons to not only myself, but family, friends. And I think, not everybody's going to be great at all of these things, but I think if you can start with one step, I think establishing habits is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what comes after, but if you're able to establish good habits, things that you can duplicate day in and day out, that's when you start to see the changes and the growth that you're searching for. So, once again, failure can create a platform for you to become who you're meant to be and walk the path that you're supposed to walk. Now, I've talked about the 4 E's: establish habits, execute habits, evaluate, and then evolve. And so I think true breakthrough comes from the 3rd step, and that begins with an honest evaluation. You can't evolve if you don't evaluate. What did I learn when I had to look in the mirror and say, okay, what habits are working for me? What aren't? What can I do differently? Breakthrough is not one big event. It's the result of consistent, intentional evaluation and execution after failure. Now, evaluation comes at this point. Now, there may be things that you do really, really well. And you can see those things and you can see how positive they are. But the harder thing is to see the things that aren't working and then how do you change them? I think a big part of evaluation is have someone that you can really talk to, you can really share with, because sometimes we won't do the hard thing. If we evaluate ourselves and we say, okay, I really, really sucked at that. That's hard to look in the mirror and honestly think yeah, I'm gonna tell myself I suck today. But that's what evaluation is. You have to take the good with the bad. And in the 4 E's, evaluation leads to evolution. And if you can't bridge those 2 things, then you're going to throw the whole thing out, right? Because true evolution can't come if the evaluation is not thorough, is not deep, and it's not meaningful when it comes to changes. So those 2 things are so connected in how you become the best version of yourself. Now, when we say failure, I think most times, especially as an athlete, you think about winning and losing. That's kind of where my mind goes right away. But we have to redefine winning when we're talking about evolving. Winning isn't about perfection. It's about perseverance. Real success is when you use your past pain to help others find hope. Now, my story is one that I share transparently. It's also one that, if you really think about what we need as human beings, is we need to be connected. And there's no better way to connect with others than through similar stories or life experiences. Your story of failure can become someone's survival guide. And that's what's been so wonderful about the things that I've gone through, the things that my wife and I have gone through, because we always felt we were the only people going through it. We thought we were the only marriage that was putting on this huge facade out front. Because I've asked a lot of friends during that time where Michelle and I were kind of, I wouldn't say a little rocky, we were very rocky, but nobody knew it. So we were putting on this great face. But one of the things that her and I really came to understand is that we weren't the only people going through this. When you talk about being parents and chasing kids, like we all get into that rat race. You're always running around. And sometimes as a couple, you're like two ships passing in the night. And so we really had to get to a point where we're like, you know what? It's okay. We know we're not the only ones. And we began to get really, really comfortable in sharing our story. And so right now, you have to think about this. Your breakthrough begins where your excuses end. And for me, I had to stop making excuses as to why certain things weren't happening from me and realize that it was because I was trying to force something, honestly, that God knew I wasn't supposed to do. And he showed me through almost losing the most valuable and important relationship of my life. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes it's big. And those are the ones we see really easily. A big event that happens like that. But usually that big event is a culmination of all these little things that have been going on that you aren't aware of, that you just gloss over. So everything in your life, you have to look at, you have to evaluate. Is it a good habit? Is it a bad habit? I go, when we can truly do that and do that evaluation that we're talking about, that's when you can evolve. But until you can get to be real with yourself, you're never going to go where you're supposed to go. Now, after all that, we're going to talk about how you can take your pain and turn it into purpose. So here's what I want you to do. Write down your biggest failure and list the lessons that you've learned from it. Ask yourself, how can this experience serve others or strengthen me moving forward? Choose one step this week that moves you from reflection to reconstruction. And you too can begin to walk in your purpose. Thanks for joining. I'm Kenyon Murray. Until next time, let's keep connecting.